Do you think brands like McDonald's, Target, or CVS will last forever? Think again. Food prices have surged 43% in just 6 months. Hundreds of retail stores, big and small, across America have already shut their doors. And now a list of 10 retail chains that once stood as pillars of American consumer life, from groceries to fast food, is teetering on the edge of total collapse. Not because shoppers suddenly changed their habits, but because of something that sounded almost patriotic: tariffs. Since the Trump administration slapped 35 to 50% tariffs on goods from Canada, Mexico, and Asia, operating costs have skyrocketed. Consumers pulled back, shelves went empty, and one by one stores began closing quietly in the shadows. No media outlet is talking about it. No analyst dares to say it out loud. But in this video, we're going to expose the names that are in free fall and the reasons why this crisis could turn this Christmas into a nightmare for millions of American families. Number 1. McDonald's. For millions of working-class Americans, McDonald's has never just been a fast food joint. It used to be part of everyday life. A $6 lunch to get through a double shift, a cheap family meal on the weekend, a reliable stop on a long highway drive. But all of that is changing, quietly, step by step, and the unsettling part: very few people actually understand why. In just 3 years, the price of a Big Mac combo has blown past $12 in many states. In California, some stores are reporting nearly $15 for a meal that used to be considered budget-friendly. This isn't because McDonald's suddenly decided to go upscale, it's because they're struggling to survive skyrocketing ingredient costs, largely driven by the indirect fallout of tariffs. Beef, cheese, cooking oil, packaging, even kitchen equipment. All are caught in the crossfire of U.S. trade policies with Canada, Mexico, and China, when the U.S. raised tariffs on aluminum, steel, vegetable oils, and packaging materials. McDonald's had no choice but to push those costs onto customers. But that's just the surface. To cut costs, some regions have quietly changed how they prepare food. Fries are refried in the same batch of oil. Burgers are thinner than they used to be. Internal reports reveal that some stores have switched suppliers to get cheaper ingredients, even if that means sacrificing quality standards. Customers aren't told any of this. There's no press release explaining what's going on. They just taste the difference. Burgers don't hit the same portions, feel smaller, and suddenly that $15 meal doesn't feel like it's worth it. And now a quiet question is spreading: is McDonald's protecting its profits or abandoning the very customers who built it? When America's largest fast food chain starts to slip on value and trust, this isn't just a problem for one brand. It's a warning sign that the everyday consumer market in America is entering a very real, very fragile stage. Number 2. Campbell Soup Company. There was a time when just one can of Campbell's soup was enough for an easy dinner after work. No complicated cooking, no big expense. A symbol of simplicity, convenience, and comfort, but what was once an icon can also fade. And Campbell's is losing its footing. Not because people's tastes have changed, but because the system around them is shaking at its very core. Campbell's signature product, canned soup, relies heavily on basic ingredients: tomatoes, chicken, corned beans, potatoes, salt, aluminum cans, and plastic packaging. Most of those ingredients are deeply tied to cross-border supply chains. And when the U.S. imposed new tariffs on food products and packaging materials from Canada and Mexico, Campbell's had nowhere to turn. Production costs kept climbing, but if they raised prices, they'd lose their loyal customers. The ones who chose Campbell's because it was cheap and familiar. If they kept prices steady, they had to change the recipe. And that choice is exactly what's destroying what made Campbell's special. Some soups are now thinner with fewer vegetables and a weaker taste. Consumers weren't warned. They just quietly realized that the food they relied on doesn't taste the same anymore. Worse still, Campbell's is facing distribution problems. Reports from the South and Midwest say supermarkets are no longer placing bulk orders because they're unsure Campbell's can deliver on time. Shipping delays, shortages of aluminum cans and ingredients have left hundreds of shelves empty for weeks. What's happening isn't just a cost crisis, it's a crisis of trust. When a brand that once symbolized convenience and consistency starts showing cracks in the very heart of its product, consumers begin to wonder what else is being hidden. For Campbell's, the challenge isn't just selling soup. It's holding on to the trust that used to be its greatest asset, and that trust is now slipping away one can at a time. Number 3. Macys. If there's one brand that once served as the benchmark for the health of America's retail sector, it's Macys. Not just because of its hundreds of stores, but because of its iconic place in consumers' minds. From holiday parades to massive end-of-year sales. But that very familiarity has kept many people from seeing what's really happening. Macys is sliding fast, and if it collapses, it won't go quietly. Since 2023, Macys has closed more than 150 stores nationwide. Many of those locations weren't in struggling areas, quite the opposite. They were in major shopping centers that used to be packed with shoppers. The official reason restructurings, but behind the scenes is a broken supply chain directly tied to tariffs. When the US slapped higher tariffs on textiles and accessories from China, India, and Southeast Asia, Macys import costs crept up quarter after quarter. With consumer spending already weakening, Macys had to choose raise prices to protect margins or hold prices to keep customers. But neither option worked. On one hand, winter coats jumped 15 to 22% in just 1 year. Shoes and handbags rose more slowly, but many items simply disappeared from shelves because the supply dried up. On the other hand, to keep shoppers coming, Macys cut sales staff, shrank display space, and delayed new season inventory. The result, a cold, lifeless shopping experience. Customers walked in, looked around, found nothing exciting, and walked out. This decline didn't happen overnight. It's been a slow undercurrent, one cost-cutting decision. At a time, one shipment delayed one empty display after another. And shoppers only notice when they return to their local store and find it shuttered without warning. If McDonald's is the warning sign for fast food, Macys is the cold reminder that even legacy retail chains aren't immune to crisis. Number 4. Dollar General. For many rural communities and small towns across America, Dollar General isn't just a convenience store, it's the closest place to buy food, medicine, and basic necessities, when the nearest supermarket is dozens of miles away. For years, this brand survived on one simple promise: everything would be cheap. But what happens when that promise no longer holds true? The price of a basic box of cereal at a Dollar General in Mississippi is now higher than at a Walmart in suburban Atlanta. Essentials like toilet paper, milk, canned goods, and instant noodles, the lifeline items for low-income families, have all risen 15 to 28% in just 12 months. This isn't because Dollar General is deliberately hiking prices to boost profits. In fact, it's the opposite. They're being crushed between two forces: higher import costs driven by tariffs and rising operational costs from local inflation. And because most of their stores are in remote areas, shipping goods from central warehouses to each location has become a logistical nightmare. It's not just prices going up, service quality is sliding too. Many stores now run with bare minimum staffing, leading to cluttered aisles, messy shelves, and even safety hazards. In some locations, customers literally have to walk into the stockroom to find what they need because no one is around to restock the shelves. Shortages have also become routine, not because demand isn't there, but because Dollar General can no longer compete in a supply chain that's constantly shifting. Major suppliers are prioritizing Walmart, Costco, and Kroger, the chains with bigger buying power and the ability to pay up front. The irony: despite the word dollar in its name, shoppers are starting to wonder, is it worth it? When the price isn't $1 anymore and what you get is frustration, poor quality, and the feeling of being left behind. Dollar General once served as a lifeline for low-income Americans. But now, as everything gets more expensive, and even the cheapest store is no longer cheap, many are asking if the last place to save money is slipping away what's left to hold on to. Number 5. Wendys. In America's fast food wars, Wendys was once seen as the most grounded name in the game. From its fresh, never-frozen slogan to its thick, generously stacked burgers, Wendys earned consumer trust through a clear promise of quality. But in recent months, that trust has started to crack. Not with loud announcements or headlines, but with tiny, almost imperceptible changes that make people wonder, something's not right. First, there's the price. A standard combo meal at Wendys now runs between $11 and $14 in many mid-sized cities. Not even the ones hit hardest by inflation. That price point pushes Wendys out of the affordable category and into dangerous territory: not cheap enough to beat McDonald's, but not premium enough to compete with Shake Shack. Price hikes are one thing, but what worries customers more are the changes in quality, changes no one's talking about. The beef patties seem thinner. The cheese doesn't melt the way it used to. The lettuce looks less crisp, less fresh. People are beginning to ask, is Wendys changing its recipe or its philosophy? The answer lies behind the counter, where the real battle over rising ingredient costs is being fought. When the US slapped tariffs on Canadian beef and Mexican vegetable oils, domestic suppliers raised their prices. Unlike McDonald's or Burger King, Wendy's doesn't have the same massive buying power, which makes it far more vulnerable to those price swings. And it goes deeper. Internal reports from several states reveal that Wendy's quietly started using temporarily frozen beef in certain markets, a direct contradiction of the proud, never-frozen pledge they've built their brand on. What unsettles customers most isn't that Wendy's is changing. It's that they're doing it in silence. No statements, no apologies, no explanations. In a market where trust is the most valuable currency, trading even a sliver of quality for profit, even just a few percentage points, could be the mistake that drives customers away for good. Number 6. Trader Joe's. Trader Joe's has never been just another grocery store. Customers don't love it simply for the prices or the convenience. They love it for the experience, unique imported products, creative packaging, friendly staff, and that feeling of shopping as an adventure. But that very model has made Trader Joe's more vulnerable than almost any other chain when the global supply chain hits turbulence. Over the past year, hundreds of Trader Joe's signature items have been pulled, replaced, or vanished without explanation. Italian cheeses, Belgian chocolates, Mexican sauces, Asian spices, all have fallen into the dreaded long-term out-of-stock category. The reason isn't splashed across headlines, but distributors quietly admit the truth. The new tariffs on packaged foods, dairy, wine, and organic goods from Europe and South America have made it impossible for Trader Joe's to keep prices where they were. What makes things worse is Trader Joe's lack of an online store or home delivery system like the big chains. They rely almost entirely on loyal shoppers coming into the store, and when those shoppers show up, only to leave empty-handed because items are out of stock or prices have jumped overnight. That loyalty starts to crack. Unlike Walmart or Costco, which can strong-arm suppliers into deals, Trader Joe's runs on a different system. They order exclusive private label products from individual makers. When the supply chain snaps under the weight of tariffs and soaring shipping costs, there's no quick backup source. What was once their strength, their creativity, is now their trap. Shoppers are drifting to more traditional chains because at least they still have things on the shelf. And the very uniqueness that once made Trader Joe's stand out is now making them inconvenient. The drop in sales hasn't yet hit the point of collapse, but if the chain doesn't adapt fast in this era of choked global costs, the very thing that made people love Trader Joe's might be the thing that drags it down. Number 7. Safeway. For many middle-aged Americans, Safeway used to mean one thing: safety. A supermarket that wasn't too fancy, wasn't too cheap, but always felt full, familiar, and steady. The place you could count on for fresh produce, warm bread, quality deli meats, and a wide range of goods, without the chaos or long lines of Walmart. But that feeling of safety is fading, slowly, quietly, just like the name Safeway suggests, but this time in the opposite direction. Since early 2024, Safeway has begun shifting its pricing strategy across several states. Basic staples like chicken milk cheese and cooking oil have crept up week after week, without the usual promotions to soften the blow. Families who used to stock up on the weekend are now noticing their bills running $30 to $50 higher than a year ago, even though their carts look exactly the same. Things got worse when imports, everything from fresh fruit to specialty cheeses and wine, started vanishing from the shelves. An employee at a Safeway in Oregon confirmed that many containers are now being held at the border or taxed so heavily that bringing them in simply isn't viable. The reason Safeway doesn't have the same leverage to negotiate tariff exemptions as the giant multinational chains, so they feel the full weight of the new trade policies. On top of that, cost cutting has begun to show. Many Safeway stores have pulled back on staff and services. Some locations that once baked fresh bread now only offer frozen loaves. The once busy hot food counters limp along at half capacity. Self-checkout has replaced many cashiers, but glitches constantly turning shopping into an exercise in frustration. The decline of Safeway isn't from a single bad decision. It's the cumulative impact of everything at once: rising ingredient costs, disrupted supply chains, staffing shortages, and above all, the crushing weight of new trade tariffs, swelling operating expenses beyond control. Safeway isn't bankrupt. It's not shuttering stores en masse. But the safe enough model they built over decades is being quietly strangled by forces beyond their control. And in an era where stability itself has become a luxury, Safeway losing its ability to hold the line on prices and on trust. Maybe the most alarming warning sign of all. Number 8. Kroger. Not as flashy as Whole Foods, not as mass market as Walmart, but Kroger has dominated swaths of the Midwest and South thanks to a web of thousands of stores, fair pricing, and a long-standing reputation for reliable supply. But 2025 has brought something unusual at Kroger stores in Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky, the very heart of its network. Shelves are going bare, not just one or two products, entire sections. Milk, meat, produce, frozen goods, packaged foods, all missing in waves. Retail analysts say they've never seen anything like this at Kroger, not on this scale. And when they dig into the reasons, one central factor emerges: the domino effect of tariffs hitting essential imports. Kroger isn't as dependent on foreign goods as Trader Joe's, but it relies heavily on a steady multinational supply chain. A significant share of packaged meats, fresh vegetables, and prepared ingredients comes from Canada, Mexico, and South America. When those countries respond with counter tariffs or tighten trade, Kroger is forced to lean on domestic sources. Already strained by droughts, farm labor shortages, and fertilizer prices climbing sky high. The reality. By Q2 of 2025, Kroger's import costs for beef and fresh greens jumped more than 27% year over year. They tried to hold prices steady, but that meant cutting back on selection. 10 types of vegetables became 4. 6 kinds of milk shrank to 2. That lack of variety is dragging down customer morale. Shoppers no longer see the familiar abundance. Grocery runs are taking longer, more frustrating, sometimes ending in disappointment when a staple isn't there. At Kroger, that used to be unthinkable. Making matters worse, Kroger is in the middle of a high-profile merger with Albertsons, a deal under intense scrutiny criticized for edging toward monopoly territory. In a climate this unstable, even small disruptions can erode trust. A chain that once embodied stability in the Midwest now faces an impossible choice: raise prices and risk losing the loyal customers who made it strong, or keep scrambling in frustration as the shelves stay stubbornly empty. Number 9. Target. Target was once the very definition of the smart choice for America's middle class. Compared to Walmart, it offered a more pleasant shopping experience, better curated products, trendier designs, and prices that stayed within reach. But because it catered to the most price-sensitive segment, families that aren't poor but certainly not flush, Target is now being hit with a crisis from both sides, supply and demand. On the supply side, Target has long relied on cheap imports to keep prices competitive while still projecting a sense of quality. Household goods, textiles, kids apparel, organics, and personal care items mostly come from China, Vietnam, India, and Mexico. When the new tariffs on imports from these countries kicked in during 2024, input costs soared. Yet Target couldn't simply pass that burden on to shoppers. The fallout: hundreds of products quietly disappeared from shelves. Seasonal promotions were slashed. Many of Target's private label lines, the very thing that kept customers coming back, were delayed or shelved entirely because costs spun out of control. On the demand side, the middle-class backbone of Target's business is tightening their belts like never before. At levels unseen since the 2008 financial crisis, they're cutting out anything non-essential. And Target, whose strength has always been curated shopping, has become one of the first stops they cross off the list. Stores that used to buzz with foot traffic are now eerily quiet during what were once peak hours. Shelves remain stocked, but with less variety and less appeal. Store associates aren't as upbeat, partly because their hours and bonuses have been cut, partly because they too feel adrift in a company that seems to be changing every week. Even newly opened stores are faltering. In Arizona, a Target location less than 6 months old has already reduced its operating hours due to sluggish sales, while operating costs remain stubbornly high. For Target, the biggest threat isn't sudden bankruptcy, it's slow erosion. Each time a customer leaves because their favorite product isn't there, each time a promotion vanishes, each time an employee quits and isn't replaced. Piece by piece, the brand is losing the very thing that made it thrive: the delicate balance between cheapness and true value. Number 10. Walgreens. A pharmacy was once a place that provided a sense of reassurance. In the shaky rhythms of the American economy, you might skip a restaurant meal, you might postpone a vacation, but you couldn't delay buying medicine, toilet paper, or other essentials. Walgreens understood that, and for decades it ran on one principle: be everywhere, always stocked. But that very promise of being everywhere has become a crushing weight. In just the past year, Walgreens has quietly shut down more than 400 locations in low and middle-income neighborhoods. There were no loud announcements, no detailed explanations. But reports out of counties like Cook and Harris point to a familiar pattern. Rising operating costs, shrinking profits, and most of all, the impact of new import tariffs on pharmaceuticals, medical packaging, and disposable supplies. Add to that surging rent and labor costs while profit margins on most products remain razor thin. And Walgreens was left with two choices: raise prices or pull out. For customers already struggling with high prescription costs, that retreat felt like an unspoken rejection. The shortages aren't isolated anymore. Customers are walking away empty-handed when looking for cold medicine cough syrup or even basic multivitamins. Winter wellness products vanish overnight, and the supply chain can't restock them fast enough, hampered by shortages from countries like India and Germany. Both heavily hit by America's new trade tariffs. Worse still, the stores that remain are overwhelmed. Lines stretch long for prescriptions. A single employee juggles 3 jobs at once, advising customers, ringing up sales, and unloading stock. A system built on precision and reliability now feels chaotic. For Walgreens, this isn't just about slipping sales. It's about a basic health infrastructure slowly being hollowed out. And when a pharmacy is no longer a trusted stop in a moment of need, consumers are left asking, how many options do they really have left? When McDonald's target Wendys and Walgreens, brands that once defined convenience and stability, all slide into decline at the same time, this stops being a corporate problem. It's a signal that America's entire consumer ecosystem is tipping dangerously off balance. People are losing trust. They don't know where to turn as the cost of living climbs. Choices shrink, and the stores that served them for decades quietly fade away. If this collapse continues, we won't just lose retail chains. We'll lose the very feeling that day-to-day life is still something we can control.
This video does not promote division within the United States or encourage litigation. All content is presented for the purpose of exploration, analysis, and fostering discussion based on current events, public sentiment, and social trends. We fully respect the United States Constitution and all federal regulations. If today's analysis made you think, drop a comment so we can keep the conversations going. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you will never miss our next independent deep dive.